The Galactic Hegemony had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They were old, powerful, and very proud of themselves. 73 different species lived under their control, and every single one of them had learned the same hard lesson when they were first discovered. Submit or die. There was no third option. The hegemony's war fleet was massive. Millions of ships spread across 100,000 star systems. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their soldiers numbered in the trillions. And their bureaucrats kept perfect records of every species they had ever conquered. So, when the sensors at a small outpost called Kethra picked up a strange ship coming from the empty space between galaxies, nobody was worried. High Commander Vexel looked at the readings with mild interest. His compound eyes studied the data while his mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his kind. Another primitive species, he thought. Another civilization stumbling into the light. Another name to add to the long list of the conquered. The ship was small, only about 300 meters long, which was tiny by hegemony standards. It had an angular shape that looked almost deliberately plain. There were no visible weapons on its hull. No shield generators that the sensors could detect. The signals it was sending out were so primitive that the communications officers had to search through ancient databases just to understand them. "Attention Galactic Hegemony," the message said in slow, careful words. "This is the exploration vessel Wanderer, representing the United Earth Coalition. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations." Vexel laughed. It was not a kind laugh. He had heard these exact words before many times. Every new species said them. Every new species believed they had options. Every new species learned very quickly that they did not. Send an interception fleet, he ordered his officers. Standard first contact protocol. Let us show these humans what they are dealing with. 12 hours later, the tiny human ship sat in the middle of space surrounded by 47 warships. Each warship was huge and covered with weapons. Each one carried enough firepower to burn entire continents to ash. Together, they could have destroyed a dozen worlds without breaking a sweat. The humans had not tried to run. They had not tried to hide. They had simply stopped their ship and waited, on the bridge of the Wanderer. Commander Lisa Huang watched the holographic display in front of her. It showed all 47 enemy ships, arranged in a perfect sphere around them. Her crew was quiet, waiting for her orders. They had all known this moment would come eventually. They had prepared for it their entire careers. Lisa's face showed no fear. Instead, she wore a small smile that her crew knew very well. It was the same smile she used when playing poker, right before she revealed that she had been holding the best cards all along. "Captain," said her first officer, a tall man with kind eyes named Kevin Park. "They are demanding that we surrender our ship. They want us to submit to something they call processing." "How polite of them," Lisa said. Her voice was calm and steady. "Open a channel. Let me talk to them." The view screen flickered and changed. Now it showed the face of a hegemony officer. He was insectoid, with large compound eyes that glittered in the light. His mandibles moved as he spoke. "Human vessel," the officer said. "You are surrounded. You are outmatched. Fighting back would be stupid. Give up your ship and your crew. Do this, and you will be treated according to hegemony law." Lisa tilted her head slightly to one side. "And if we say no?" The officer's mandibles spread wide. It was meant to look threatening. "Then you will be destroyed. After that, we will find your homeworld. We will send our fleets there. We will bring your entire species to its knees by force. The hegemony has done this 73 times before. We are very good at it." There was a long moment of silence on the bridge of the Wanderer. Everyone was watching Lisa. Everyone was waiting to see what she would do. The crew members who had served with her, the longest, were trying very hard not to smile then. Lisa Huang did something that would be talked about in hegemony intelligence. "Meetings for the next 100 years, she smirked. Not a nervous smile. Not a brave face, hiding fear. A genuine, amused smirk, like someone who had just heard a child threaten to beat them up. "That is adorable," she said. "Really it is. But before you make any more threats, you should probably know something about humans." The hegemony officer's eyes flickered with confusion. This was not how conquered species were supposed to act. "We did not come here because we were lost," Lisa continued. Her smile grew wider. "We came here because we were bored." She made a small gesture with her hand, and suddenly the view screen showed something new. It was a star map, but not like any of the hegemony had ever seen. It showed their entire territory, all 100,000 systems, with perfect accuracy. Every military base was marked. Every shipyard was labeled. Every fleet was tracked. "We have been watching you for about 50% of your years," Lisa explained. Her voice was still calm, still friendly, like she was discussing the weather. "We mapped your space. We studied your technology. We learned everything we could about your weapons and your ships and your tactics." She leaned forward slightly. "We did not make contact until we were absolutely certain of one thing. We wanted to make sure that you could not hurt us, even if you tried your very hardest." The hegemony officer stared at her. His mandibles had stopped moving. His compound eyes were wide. "You're bluffing," he said. But his voice was not as confident as before. Lisa laughed. It was a warm, genuine laugh, the kind you might hear at a dinner party. "Maybe I am. Or maybe I am telling you the truth. There is really only one way to find out." She leaned back in her chair. "So here's what is going to happen. You are going to take a message back to your leaders. Tell them that humanity wants to talk. Tell them that we are not here to start a war. We are here to have a conversation." She paused. "But also tell them this. If they decide they would rather fight than talk, we are ready for that too. And unlike your other conquests, we will not be easy to beat." The channel closed. The view screen went dark. On the bridge of the Wanderer, the crew finally let themselves breathe. Kevin Park walked over to stand beside Lisa's chair. "Do you think they believed you?" Lisa watched the 47 warships on her display. They had not moved. They had not fired. They were just sitting there, waiting for orders that had not yet come. "They are not sure what to believe," she said. "And that is exactly where we want them. Confused people make mistakes. Scared people make worse ones." She stood up and stretched. "Send a message to command. Tell them first contact has been made. Phase 1 is complete." Kevin nodded. "In Phase 2? Lisa smiled again. That same small, confident smile that had made empires nervous since the beginning of human history. "Phase 2 is where things get interesting." Hegemony's regional administrator was a massive creature made entirely of living crystal. His name was Kolveth, and he had served the Empire for 300 years. In all that time, he had never seen anything like what was happening on his sensor screens. The human ship had not surrendered. This was strange, but not unheard of. Sometimes primitive species needed a small demonstration of power before they understood their situation. A warning shot across their hull usually did the trick. The human ship had not tried to run away either. This was more unusual. Most species, when faced with 47 warships, at least attempted to escape. It never worked, but they always tried. Instead, the Wanderer had simply waited for 47 minutes. And then it started to move. Kolveth watched the sensor data with growing confusion. The human ship was accelerating at speeds that should have been impossible. Ships of that size could not move that fast. The physics simply did not allow it. Yet there it was, sliding between two heavy cruisers with only meters to spare. "Fire," ordered the fleet commander. "All ships open fire now." The interception fleet responded immediately. Plasma bolts streaked through space. Kinetic projectiles launched from railguns at incredible speeds. Energy beams cut through the darkness. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Every single shot missed, not because the humans had shields, not because they had some kind of countermeasure technology. The shots missed because the Wanderer simply was not where the targeting computers said it should be. The ship moved in patterns that seemed almost random. It danced through the storm of weapons fire like a leaf blowing through a hurricane. "Impossible," Kolveth whispered. His crystalline body flickered with colors that showed his confusion. No biological species could have reaction times like that. Their computers cannot be that fast. But the evidence was right in front of him. The Wanderer spun and twisted and rolled through the kill zone. It came within centimeters of destruction a dozen times, but it never got hit. Not once. Then the human ship did something even more shocking. It stopped. The Wanderer came to a complete halt directly in front of the fleet's flagship, so close that the crew could see the ship's nameplate through the viewports. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The two ships just floated there, face to face. Then Commander Lisa Huang's voice came over the emergency broadcast channel. Every ship in the fleet heard it. Every crew member listened. "Let me explain something," she said. Her voice was calm and clear, like she was giving a lecture to students. "We have been watching your hegemony for about 50 of your years. We mapped your territory. We studied your technology. We learned everything about your military capabilities. Your weapons, your tactics, your ships, all of it." She paused to let that sink in. "We did not make contact until we were certain of one thing. We wanted to be sure that you could not hurt us even if you tried." The Wanderer's hull began to shimmer. The metal seemed to flow and change like water. The shape of the ship grew larger and larger until it was not small anymore. It was not an exploration vessel anymore. It was a warship. The vessel that now hung in space was massive. It dwarfed the hegemony flagship the way a whale dwarfs a fish. Weapons covered every surface, weapons that pulsed with energies that the sensors could not even identify. The ship radiated power like a star radiates light. "This is what we actually look like," Lisa said over the channel. "That little ship was just to see how you would react. We wanted to know if you would try to talk first or shoot first." Her voice grew slightly harder. "Congratulations. You failed the test." In the regional command center, Kolveth felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of service. His crystal body actually cracked slightly from the stress. The emotion was unfamiliar, but he recognized it from descriptions in old texts. It was fear. The administrator forced himself to think clearly. "What do we do?" He asked his officers. "What can we do?" Nobody had an answer. The human warship hung in space like a predator waiting to strike. It had not fired a single weapon. It had not made any threatening moves. But its mere presence was enough to paralyze the entire fleet. "They are hailing us," one of the communications officers reported. Her voice was shaking. "Put it through," Kolveth ordered. Lisa Huang's face appeared on the screen. She looked exactly the same as before. Calm, confident, slightly amused. "I want to be very clear about something," she said. "We are not here to conquer you. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to talk." She gestured at the massive warship around her. "But if you force us to fight, we will fight. And I think you can see now that it would not be much of a fight." Kolveth found his voice. "What do you want?" "We want to meet with your leaders. Your real leaders, not regional administrators. We want to have a conversation about the future of this galaxy." The crystal being hesitated. "And if we refuse?" Lisa smiled. It was a kind smile, almost sympathetic. "Then we will have to do things the hard way. And trust me, Administrator Kolveth, you really do not want that." She knew his name. She knew his title. She probably knew everything about him. The realization made Kolveth's body crack a little more. "I will send your message to the Grand Council," he said finally. "I cannot promise they will agree to meet with you." "They will agree," Lisa said. "They do not have much choice. But I appreciate your cooperation." The channel closed. The human warship remained where it was, patient and silent. In his command center, Kolveth began composing the most difficult message of his career. How do you tell the rulers of a 12,000-year-old empire that they are no longer the biggest fish in the ocean? How do you explain that everything they believed about their own power was wrong? He did not know the answer. But he knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never be the same again. On the bridge of the human warship, Lisa Huang turned to her first officer. Kevin Park was studying the sensor data with a thoughtful expression. "That went well," he said. Lisa nodded. "Better than expected. They did not do anything stupid. You think the Grand Council will agree to meet? They do not have a choice." Lisa looked out at the stars through the viewport. 50 years of preparation? 50 years of watching and waiting and building. And now it all comes down to this. She took a deep breath. Let us hope we are as smart as we think we are. The Grand Council of the Hegemony had not been called to an emergency meeting in over 400 years. The last time was during something called the Cascade War, when 3 conquered species had tried to rebel at the same time. That crisis had been solved in 6 months. The rebels had been crushed. Their worlds had been burned. Their names had been erased from history. This crisis, the counselors were beginning to realize, might not be solved at all. The council chamber was enormous. It was built to impress visitors with the power and majesty of the hegemony. Tall columns rose to a ceiling painted with scenes of conquest. Golden light streamed through windows that showed the stars beyond. 12 thrones sat in a circle, each one holding a representative of a founding species. Today, those representatives were terrified. They have stationed vessels at every major population center, reported Fleet Admiral Zexathon. His scales had gone pale from stress, which was a very bad sign for his species. Over 3,000 ships, each one is comparable to our largest dreadnoughts. We have no record of how they arrived. They simply appeared. How is that possible? Demanded Counselor Threnva. She was covered in bright feathers that ruffled when she was upset. Right now, they were standing straight up. We have sensors everywhere. Nothing can move through our space without being detected. Apparently something can, the Admiral replied quietly. The chamber fell silent. For 12,000 years, the hegemony had been the strongest power in this part of the galaxy. They had crushed empires. They had absorbed civilizations. They had rewritten the history books of entire species. They were used to being feared. They were not used to being afraid. What do these humans want? Asked the High Arbiter. She was an ancient being, her body covered in wrinkled gray skin. Her voice was carefully neutral, but her eyes showed concern. The Admiral hesitated before answering. They want to talk. They have requested a diplomatic meeting with the full council. Then it is a trap, Counselor Threnva said immediately. Her feathers ruffled even more. They will capture our leaders and destroy us from within. If they wanted us dead, a new voice said, we would already be dead. Everyone turned to look at the chamber's entrance. A human woman was standing there. She was middle-aged, with streaks of gray in her dark hair. She wore simple clothes and carried no weapons that anyone could see. She looked completely ordinary except for one thing. None of the guards had seen her arrive. The doors had not opened. The security systems had not triggered. She had simply appeared. My name is Patricia Gomez, the woman said. She walked calmly toward the center of the chamber, moving like someone who had never lost a fight in her entire life. I am the Earth's Coalition's ambassador to your hegemony. The guards finally reacted. Weapons swung toward the intruder. Energy rifles charged with a high-pitched whine. A dozen soldiers prepared to fire. Patricia did not even look at them. Before anyone panics, she continued, I should mention that I have been standing in this room for the last 30 minutes. You just could not see me until now. The High Arbiter raised one wrinkled hand, and the guards lowered their weapons. There was no point in shooting at someone who could apparently become invisible at will. You have made your point, Ambassador, the Arbiter said. Your species is more advanced than we realized, but that does not explain why you are here. Patricia stopped in the exact center of the chamber. She looked around at the 12 thrones and the 12 counselors who sat in them. Her face showed no fear. Her body showed no tension. She might have been discussing the weather. I am here to explain what is going to happen, she said. The hegemony is going to stop threatening every new species it encounters. You have spent 12,000 years conquering and absorbing anyone weaker than you. That stops now. Counselor Threnva made a sound of outrage. You dare to give us orders? I am not giving orders, Patricia replied calmly. I am stating facts. Here is another fact. You are going to release the 7 civilizations that are currently undergoing forced integration. You are going to give them the choice to stay in your hegemony or leave. And what if they choose to leave? Admiral Zexathon asked. Then you let them go? Simple as that. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The counselors shouted over each other, their various languages mixing into a chaos of sound. This was madness. This was impossible. This was the end of everything they had built. Patricia waited patiently until they quieted down. "There is one more thing," she said, when she could be heard again. "The hegemony is going to accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs. Not a subject species. Not a client state. An equal." The High Arbiter leaned forward on her throne. "And if we refuse?" Patricia Gomez smiled. It was not a cruel smile. It was not a threatening smile. But there was something in it that made even the bravest counselors want to look away. "Then we will have to do this the hard way. And trust me, you really do not want that." "You speak of war," the Arbiter said quietly. "No, I speak of change. War is messy and wasteful. We would prefer to avoid it." Patricia's smile faded. "But we will not avoid it at any cost. If you force our hand, we are prepared to act. And I think Admiral Zexathon can tell you how that would end." The Admiral's scales went even paler. "We cannot win," he said quietly. "I have studied their ships, their weapons, their tactics. We cannot win." Silence fell over the chamber again. It was a different kind of silence this time. Heavier, more final. "You must understand," the High Arbiter said finally. "This is not something we can do." Aside, in a single meeting, "The hegemony has existed for 12,000 years. You are asking us to change everything we are." Patricia nodded. "I understand. And we are not unreasonable. We will give you time to discuss this among yourselves. But I should warn you about something." She looked around the chamber one more time. "While you are discussing, we will be waiting. Our ships will remain at your population centers. Our observers will remain in your systems. We will be watching everything you do." Her voice grew slightly harder. "If you try to attack our vessels, we will respond. If you try to harm the species under your control, we will intervene. If you try to delay these negotiations forever, hoping that we will go away, we will not." She turned and began walking toward the exit. "You have 1 month to give us your answer. I suggest you use that time wisely." Then she vanished. One moment she was there, and the next moment she was gone. No flash of light, no sound. She simply ceased to exist in that space. The counselors stared at where she had been standing. Nobody spoke for a very long time. Finally, the High Arbiter broke the silence. "Well, it seems," she said slowly, "that we have much to discuss." Ambassador Patricia Gomez sat across from the hegemony's chief, negotiator, in a small conference room on a space station that floated between the stars. The room was simple. 2 chairs, 1 table, and a window that looked out at the endless dark. The chief negotiator was named Yelthax. He belonged to a species that communicated through patterns of light as much as through words. His body glowed with different colors as he spoke, each color carrying meaning that humans had spent years learning to understand. They had been talking for 3 days now. The negotiations were going better than either side had expected. Yelthax had discovered something surprising about the humans. They were not cruel. They were not greedy. They did not want tribute or territory or submission. They wanted only what they called basic rights. Freedom for all thinking beings. The right to explore and trade and communicate without the threat of conquest hanging over their heads by hegemony standards. It was an absurdly generous offer, and that made it terrifying. During a break in the formal discussions, Yelthax decided to ask the question that had been bothering him since this whole thing began. "I have something I wish to ask you," he said. His body glowed soft blue, which meant curiosity. "It is not part of our official negotiations." Patricia nodded. She had learned to read his colors almost as well as she read human faces. "Go ahead. I will answer if I can." "Your species," Yelthax said slowly. "How did you advance so quickly? Our records say you achieved spaceflight barely 300 years ago. Yet your technology is better than anything we have seen in 12,000 years of exploring the galaxy. How is this possible?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the distant stars. "You want to know our secret?" she said finally. "Everyone does. Even our own people wonder about it sometimes." She turned to face Yelthax. The hegemony conquered through fear. You met new species and showed them how powerful you were. You demanded that they submit. It worked because those species were alone and vulnerable. They had no one to help them, no one to teach them, no one to stand beside them. Her voice grew thoughtful. Humans are different. We spent our entire history fighting each other. Yelthax's body flickered with confusion. You fought among yourselves? Your own kind? Constantly. Every generation had its wars. Every nation had its enemies. Every family had its conflicts. Patricia smiled, but it was a sad smile. We were not a peaceful species. We were violent and competitive and stubborn. She paused. But every war taught us something. Every conflict pushed us forward. We developed new weapons, new tactics, new technologies. Not to conquer the stars, but to defeat each other. By the time we finally looked up at the sky and wondered if we were alone, we had already survived 1,000 disasters of our own making. What kind of disasters? Yelthax asked. The worst kinds. Nuclear weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. Biological weapons that could kill millions. Artificial plagues designed in laboratories. Machines that could think for themselves and did not always think kindly of their creators. Patricia's voice grew quieter. We nearly destroyed ourselves 12 times. We came to the edge of extinction and looked over the cliff. We saw what waited for us if we did not change. And you changed. We pulled back. Every single time, we pulled back from the edge. We learned from our mistakes. We adapted. We grew. She looked at Yelthax with something like pride in her eyes. That is the secret. Not some magical technology. Not some genetic advantage. Just stubbornness and luck, and the desperate will to survive. Yelthax's lights flickered in patterns of confusion and wonder. But your ships, your weapons, they are beyond anything we can understand. Tools, Patricia said simply. Just tools. The real weapon is up here. She tapped her head. Human beings are the most adaptable species we have ever encountered. We look at problems, and we solve them. It is what we do. It is all we do. She walked back to her chair and sat down. When we first discovered that there was life beyond our world, we did not feel excited. We felt afraid. We had spent our whole history fighting each other. We knew exactly how dangerous intelligent beings could be. So you prepared, Yelthax said slowly. We prepared. For 50 years, we watched your hegemony. We studied every species you conquered. We learned from their mistakes. We built ships that could not be tracked. We developed weapons that your sensors could not detect. We trained soldiers and spies and diplomats. Patricia leaned forward. We looked at your empire, and we did not see an enemy. We saw a problem to be solved. And we are very, very good at solving problems. Yelthax was silent for a long time. His body cycled through colors that Patricia did not recognize. Finally, he spoke again. The High Arbiter asked me something yesterday. She wanted to know why you chose peace instead of war. You could have conquered us. You could have done to us what we did to everyone else. What did you tell her? I told her I did not know. I could not understand why a species with such power would not use it. Patricia nodded slowly. I will tell you why. Because we tried conquest. On our own world, for thousands of years, we tried it. Strong nations conquered weak ones. Empires rose and fell, and every single time, the conquered eventually rose up. The oppressed eventually fought back. The weak eventually became strong. Her voice grew firm. Conquest does not work. Not in the long run. The only way to build something that lasts is to build something that people want to be part of. Something fair. Something just. She gestured at the space around them. We do not want to rule your hegemony. We want to change it. We want to turn it into something better. Something that every species can be proud of. Something that will last not for 12,000 years, but forever. Yelthax studied her for a long moment. His colors shifted to a warm golden glow. The Arbiter was right about one thing, he said finally. What is that? She said you were the most terrifying species she had ever encountered. Not because of your weapons or your ships, Because you have the power to destroy us, and you choose not to. Because you have already learned the lessons that we are only beginning to understand. Patricia smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and kind. We learned them the hard way. We hope you will learn them easier. She stood up and offered her hand, a human gesture of friendship. Shall we continue our negotiations? Yelthox reached out with his own limb and touched her hand. His body glowed bright gold, as he said, I believe we shall. 1 year had passed since the humans first appeared in hegemony space. 1 year since a small ship called the Wanderer had faced down 47 warships and smiled. 1 year since everything changed. The galaxy looked very different now. The hegemony still existed. But it was not the same empire it had been. The old system of conquest and submission was gone. In its place was something new. Something more like a partnership than a dictatorship. The 73 species who had once lived in fear now lived in something closer to freedom. The 7 civilizations that had been undergoing forced integration were given a choice. They could leave the hegemony and go their own way, or they could stay as equal members of a reformed government. Most of them chose to stay, not because they were afraid, because, for the first time in their history, they actually wanted to. Lisa Huang stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the first joint project between humans and the hegemony. The station was massive, a ring of metal and glass that orbited a blue star. Ships from a dozen different species came and went through its docking bays. Markets sold goods from 100 different worlds. Restaurants served food that no human had ever tasted before. Lisa had been promoted since the first contact. She was a Commodore now, responsible for the entire human presence in this sector. It was a big job, but she handled it the same way she handled everything. With calm confidence and that small smile that had become famous across the galaxy, she was watching a group of children play in the station's central park. They came from 5 different species. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had skin like humans. They were chasing each other around a fountain, laughing in languages that did not translate, but somehow everyone understood. You look thoughtful, said a voice beside her. Lisa turned to find Ambassador Patricia Gomez walking toward her. The older woman carried 2 cups of coffee, a human drink that had become surprisingly popular among certain alien species. Just thinking about how far we have come, Lisa said. Accepting one of the cups, Patricia nodded and stood beside her, watching the children play. It is strange, is it not? A year ago, those children's parents were afraid of each other. Now their kids are playing together like it is the most natural thing in the world. Children adapt faster than adults. They do not carry the same weight of history.
True.
Patricia took a sip of her coffee. The council asked me something yesterday. They wanted to know why we chose diplomacy instead of domination. Lisa raised an eyebrow. What did you tell them? I told them that we had already tried domination on our own world. We spent thousands of years conquering each other, building empires, tearing them down, fighting over territory and resources and pride, and none of it ever lasted. She gestured at the station around them. This has a chance of lasting, because we built it together, because everyone has a stake in making it work, because it is not about one species ruling all the others. Lisa nodded slowly. The High Arbiter told me something similar. She said it was the most terrifying thing she had ever heard.
What?
That a species capable of destroying them had chosen not to. Not because we were weak, not because we were kind, because we had learned through bitter experience that destruction does not work. Patricia laughed softly. I suppose that is terrifying from a certain point of view. We are not conquerors. We are not saviors. We are just stubborn survivors who learned some hard lessons. They stood in silence for a while, watching the ships come and go. A hegemony cargo vessel docked next to a human transport. The crews exchanged waves through the viewports, a gesture that had become universal in the past year. Eh? Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing? Lisa asked suddenly. Patricia looked at her. What do you mean? We could have stayed hidden. We could have watched from the shadows for another 50 years. Another 100 years? We could have waited until we were so far ahead that no one could ever catch us. And then what? Lisa shrugged. I do not know. That is what worries me. Patricia put a hand on her shoulder. We made the choice we made because it was the right one. Not the safe one. The right one. There is a difference. She pointed at the children in the park. Look at them. 5 species that were enemies a year ago. 5 species that might have spent the next 1,000 years fighting each other. Now they are friends. Now they are building something new together. Her voice grew serious. That is what we chose. Not safety. Not power. Hope. Lisa watched the children for a long moment. One of them, a small being with bright blue feathers, had fallen down. The others immediately stopped playing and helped her up. They spoke words of comfort in languages she could not understand, but the meaning was clear enough. They expected us to be afraid, Lisa said finally. When we showed up in their space, they thought we would cower like everyone else. Instead, we smirked. Patricia nodded. We smirked because we had spent our whole history preparing for exactly that moment. Every war, every plague, every disaster taught us something. By the time we reached the stars, we had already survived the worst the universe could throw at us. Lisa raised her coffee cup in a small toast. Here is to humanity. Too stubborn to know when to quit. Too creative to stay beaten. And too curious to stay home. Patricia clinked her cup against Lisa's. Here is to the galaxy. They thought they were getting conquerors. Instead, they got us, she smiled. God help them all. In the vast emptiness of space, the stars continued their eternal dance. They did not care about the small dramas playing out beneath them. They did not notice the treaties being signed, or the friendships being formed, or the old hatreds slowly fading away. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the beings who lived among those stars looked up with something other than fear. They looked up with curiosity. They looked up with wonder. They looked up with hope. Somewhere on Unity Station, a child laughed. The sound echoed through the corridors, mixing with a dozen other voices in a dozen other languages. It was the sound of the future being born, and across the galaxy. In boardrooms and command centers and humble homes, people were starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, the universe was not such a frightening place after all. Maybe the darkness between the stars was not empty. Maybe it was full of possibilities they had never imagined. The humans had shown them that, not with weapons, not with threats. With a smile and an outstretched hand and the simple, stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better than today, that was their real secret. That was what made them dangerous. Not their ships or their technology or their soldiers. Their hope and hope. As the galaxy was learning, was the most powerful force in the universe.